Some days, you feel exhausted, even though you didn't really do anything extreme. You check off tasks, meet every deadline, keep your body moving, but deep down, it feels like you haven't gotten anywhere. Like you're just busy, running from yourself. You think it's a lack of focus, that you need more discipline. But maybe that's not the real issue. Maybe what's missing is direction. The world taught you to confuse productivity with purpose, to chase rewards, not meaning. And as neuroscientist Andrew Huberman explains, the modern brain doesn't get hooked on accomplishment. It gets hooked on the anticipation that something interesting is about to happen. That's why the feed grabs your attention. That's why, even when you get everything done, it still feels like you haven't done what really matters. And so, your focus fades. But it doesn't disappear. It gets redirected. You give your attention to what soothes the discomfort, not to what transforms you. Psychiatrist Viktor Frankl once said that when life loses its meaning, suffering intensifies. Without a why, even success feels heavy. You have everything, and still feel like something's missing. Maybe it's not more focus you need. Maybe it's just a deeper reason to keep going. Because focus isn't a technique, it's a result. It shows up when something inside you finally makes sense. And if your mind feels scattered, maybe it's because your heart can't keep pretending anymore. Pretending it knows where it's going. Pretending it's fine. Pretending that you just need to get organized. That's not what's missing. What's missing is meaning. And maybe that's why you're here. If focus is the result of meaning, then the question shifts. It's no longer, how can I focus more? It becomes, what within me is truly worth focusing on? That's where the path begins. Clarity doesn't come from effort. It comes from connecting with what's real. That's why the first powerful habit for staying focused on your purpose has nothing to do with productivity. It's about silence, listening before acting. Because so many people try to plan their lives just so they don't have to feel. You set goals, organize schedules, create flawless routines. But underneath it all, it's not organization, it's emotional self-defense. And there's a profound idea brought by Carl Rogers, one of the leading voices in humanistic psychology. To him, a person only becomes truly functional when they come into direct contact with their own experience, when they no longer need to hide from themselves. It's not about fixing what you feel, it's about allowing yourself to feel it. No rush, no judgment, just truth. But most of the time, we do the opposite. We fill every space with a list, every discomfort with a goal, as if being organized could fix everything, when, often, it's just another way to run away. And the trickiest part? This mental noise, that internal restlessness disguised as thinking, feels useful, but it's not. Sometimes, it's just your body asking for help, begging for a pause. Before opening any planner, any list of goals, just sit, 5 minutes. No need to think, just listen. No rush, no judgment, just hear what's alive in there. Because if you don't listen to yourself, you'll end up following whatever voice screams the loudest. And living like that is how you end up being productive in the wrong direction. After listening to yourself in silence comes the second habit, one you probably never learned, but that changes everything. Protecting your attention with the same care you give your sleep, because there's a huge difference between being distracted and being drained. But in today's world, it all feels the same. You try to focus. You can't. You get frustrated. You blame yourself. But what no one told you is that maybe the problem isn't your discipline. Maybe it's your energy. Maybe you're not scattered. Maybe you're just depleted. We tend to underestimate mental exhaustion like it's some kind of personal failure. But living under a constant flood of alerts, notifications, feeds, noise, and comparisons is not neutral. It wears you down. It confuses you. It disorients you. And there's something neuroscientist Andrew Huberman explains with striking clarity. Your modern brain isn't addicted to focus. It's addicted to the anticipation of reward. In other words, what keeps you hooked isn't the content. It's the promise that something better is about to appear. You cling to the expectation, not the experience, and the effect of that is brutal. Your mind can no longer sustain continuous effort. You start a task, and 5 minutes later, you're already opening another tab, another video, another idea, not out of laziness, but because your nervous system has been trained to escape discomfort, even when that discomfort is exactly what leads you to what really matters. Deep focus these days is almost an act of rebellion, and trying to force focus with more pressure, more guilt, more demands only makes it worse. Focus can't be forced. It has to be nurtured with care, with the right environment, with intention. Protecting your attention is like protecting your sleep. You don't sleep well just anywhere, with any light, at any time. You prepare your body, you prepare your room, you reduce stimulation. So why would it be any different with focus? Create a space, no matter how small, where your mind understands it's time to return, to breathe, to commit, as if you were stepping into a quiet temple, a space where your attention can finally rest, and only then awaken to what truly matters. After learning to protect your attention comes the third habit, one of the most underestimated, but also one of the most transformative: creating rituals and letting go of your dependence on motivation, because motivation is volatile. It comes and goes. It depends on your mood, the weather, external validation, the number of likes, how much energy you happen to have that day. And when you tie your consistency to motivation, your life becomes a game of emotional luck. But there's a steadier path, a quieter one, ritualizing what matters. Here, we bring in a core idea from James Clear, an author who deeply explored how habits shape identity. He shows that repetition, even without motivation, is what rebuilds who you believe you are. It's not about how ready you feel. It's about how often you repeat. Because identity isn't something you choose. It's something you build. And that's what a ritual is. A symbolic code your brain understands as, now it's time. It doesn't have to be grand. In fact, the simpler it is, the better. It could be a glass of water, a specific song, a certain light turned on in a certain way. It's the repetition, not the size of the gesture, that sends the signal. This matters. Rituals are anchors. They stabilize your day when everything else feels unstable. They pull you back when your mind starts to wander. And more than just functional, they're emotional. Because when you create a ritual, you're declaring that something matters. You're turning the ordinary into something sacred, even if no one sees it, even if there's no visible result yet. You don't need to feel ready every day. You just need one small gesture that reminds you who you're trying to become, even when the world, and even you, forgets. After creating your rituals comes the fourth habit, one that seems simple, but can be the turning point between consistency and giving up. Narrow the scope. Keep the rhythm. Because there's a silent trap in every change process. The rush, the illusion that you can transform your entire life over a weekend. Like a new planner, a fresh routine, or an online course could undo years of inner confusion in a matter of days. But they can't. And this is where one of the deepest lessons of behavioral psychology comes in. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman, in his research on how we make decisions, showed that our brain seeks shortcuts. If something feels too big, too hard, too far away, the brain simply shuts down. It saves energy and gives up. That's why going all in isn't always strength. Sometimes it's self-sabotage. You don't need to do a lot. You just need to do a little, consistently. 30 minutes a day with purpose are worth more than 8 hours dragged by obligation once a month. Consistency isn't about intensity. It's about staying. Quiet consistency has a power that loud motivation will never have. It doesn't impress, but it transforms. Reducing the scope is an act of humility in the face of your own limits. Keeping the rhythm is an act of respect for your own process. It's knowing that the depth of a path doesn't depend on how fast you walk it, but on the courage to keep going. Even if it's just one step a day, even if no one sees, even if you're not proud of it yet, because one day it'll make sense, and it'll feel like it was always meant to be. If keeping your rhythm is already hard, it gets even harder when your inner environment is built on noise, Because what distracts you isn't just outside. It's also inside the very things you call rest. And that's where the fifth habit comes in. Watch what you consume just as much as what you try to produce. Because your attention isn't an island. It's shaped every single day by what you let in, what you watch, what you hear, what you repeat without noticing. All of it slowly reshapes the way you see the world and how you see yourself in it. You try to build focus, but feed on stimuli that break you apart. You want depth, but surround yourself with shallow content. You seek presence, but consume comparison. It's like trying to run with weights tied to your ankles. You might still move forward, but it takes too much effort, too much fatigue, with results that don't even feel right. Because the truth is, what you consume silently rebuilds your identity. And that goes for everything. A quote in the middle of a video, a random comment, an image that hits you when you're most vulnerable. All of it leaves a mark. And the most deceptive part? This kind of content looks like rest, but it doesn't calm you. It stimulates you. It pulls you away from yourself, away from everything that's truly yours. So the symbolic act here is simple, but powerful. Cut your passive consumption in half. You don't have to disappear from the internet. Just trade part of it for something that reconnects you. A text that makes you reflect, not compare. A video that brings you inward, not back into the noise. Because focus is also about nourishment. And what you feed is what grows, even when you don't realize it's growing. And there comes a moment when, even doing everything right, you feel stuck. Not because you lack a method, but because you're drowning in self-pressure. You want to take action, but before you even try, you already feel guilty for not having started sooner, for wasting time, for falling behind. And this is where the sixth habit comes in. Turn guilt into curiosity. Because guilt paralyzes you. It disguises itself as responsibility, but more often than not, it's just fear. Fear of facing the fact that maybe you don't know where to restart. Fear of admitting that other people's pace is hurting you. Fear of honestly looking at the life you've been building on autopilot. You begin to punish yourself. You blame yourself for not being productive. And the more you blame, the less you can act, until focus becomes a battlefield inside your head, where every attempt becomes just another disappointment. Writer Mark Manson talks about this with brutal honesty. He says the problem isn't lack of discipline, it's the fear of facing what lies beneath procrastination, and that changes everything. Because when you trade guilt for curiosity, you don't disconnect from what you feel. You get closer, you ask instead of punish, you explore instead of attack. And in that space, something shifts. You discover that what paralyzes you isn't what's missing, it's what you haven't yet had the courage to feel. So next time guilt shows up, don't treat it like truth, treat it like a symptom. And ask yourself, honestly, what inside me is trying to be heard right now? That question won't solve everything, but it opens the door to a kind of focus that doesn't come from force, but from listening, from care, from a desire to understand, not just control. And after facing guilt with curiosity, we arrive at the seventh habit, maybe the most human one, the most necessary. Accepting that purpose isn't consistency, it's return, because you will lose your way. You will disconnect from things that once felt meaningful. And that's not failure, it's part of the process. We've been taught to think of purpose as a straight line, like it's some kind of permanent revelation, stable, immune to doubt. But that's not how life works, not even your heart. Psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who dedicated his life to understanding what gives suffering meaning, once said that humans can endure almost any how, as long as they have a why. But he never claimed that the why would always be clear. Sometimes it hides. Sometimes it changes shape. And what hurts isn't getting lost. It's believing that because you got lost, you no longer deserve to come back to yourself, to what matters, to what still beats inside you, even if muffled. Purpose isn't about never doubting. It's about returning, choosing again, even without the same certainty, even with fear, even while tired, just like loving someone. You don't love because you're always infatuated. You love because you choose to stay, even when everything feels confusing. And maybe that's the most transformative thing of all, realizing you don't need absolute consistency. You need a quiet compass within, one that reminds you, even on cloudy days, that it's possible to begin again. Without having to start from scratch, you just have to return to where it all started to make sense, even if only inside you. In the end, focus isn't a tool. It's not a technique. It's not something you force into place with sheer willpower. Focus is a consequence. It's born from meaning, from something you value, even if you can't explain why. You can try to force concentration with apps, to-do lists, alarms, and systems, but if what you're doing doesn't align with what you feel, nothing will hold, because your brain might run on autopilot, but your heart doesn't. And maybe what you're missing isn't another productivity system. Maybe what's missing is remembering what moves you, remembering what once made your eyes light up, remembering what, even on your worst days, would still make you get out of bed. Psychologist Carl Rogers, who spent his life studying what makes someone truly functional, said that the most balanced person isn't the most consistent. It's the one most connected to their own experience, to what they feel, to who they are, and that changes everything. Because true focus doesn't require blind effort. It requires presence, awareness, and a reconnection to what makes sense to you, even if no one else gets it. You don't need to change everything, not now. Not all at once. You just need one reason to wake up tomorrow, even if it's small, even if it's messy, even if it doesn't have a name yet. Because sometimes all we really need is one real reason to come back to ourselves, back to what matters, back to whatever, in silence, still reminds us why we started. If any part of this video touched something in you, hold on to it today, not as another task, but as a reminder that you don't have to be ready. You just have to be willing to return, gently, truthfully, with yourself. I'll see you in the next one, or maybe in your next step, whatever it may be, and whenever you're ready.